A ship strikingly similar to the legendary Titanic collides with a massive iceberg. Two lovers lose each other, and the girl is dragged underwater by a terrifying ghost. We learn that 100 years after the Titanic disaster, another ship, named Titanic 3, was built. It is meant to retrace the route of the legendary ocean liner. Famous blogger Mia Stone and her husband Jackson are among the passengers on this vessel. They take selfies with their fans, stream live for their audience, and board the ship. Celeste Rhodes is appointed captain of the Titanic 3, and security chief duties are given to former U.S. military officer Brian Andrews. All systems pass inspection successfully, and soon the crew starts the engines. The tourists raise their glasses of champagne and set off on an exciting journey. We find out that a stowaway has snuck aboard. She is a red-haired young woman who wanders through the ship's cargo holds, carefully examining everything around her. Mia and Jackson are recording another video for their fans. It turns out that this ship is an exact replica of the legendary Titanic. Tomorrow, all passengers will arrive at the site of the disaster that claimed 1,500 lives, and they will observe a moment of silence to honor the victims. The stowaway continues to wander around Titanic 3, finds a cabin filled with museum exhibits, and intends to take one of them. It is the legendary violin played by the musicians during the sinking of the Titanic. It had been lying on the seabed for 100 years. The woman is stopped by the head of this museum, Professor Cochrane. Looking at the other artifacts, she notices that her great-grandmother had the exact same hairpin. The woman says that nothing should be taken from shipwreck sites, otherwise one may awaken a terrible curse. Mia and Jackson continue filming their vlog, and in the process, they also manage to get into an argument with Cochrane. The bloggers decide to explore the corridors on the lower decks of the ship and accidentally run into Andrews. He shows Mia and Jackson the way to their cabin. Cochrane boasts to one of the passengers that he managed to board the legendary Titanic and take quite a few artifacts from it. For example, he now has a wedding ring with the engraving Edward and Sarah. It might have belonged to the Titanic's captain, Edward Smith. The red-haired stowaway finds a portrait of Captain Smith and decides to summon the spirits of the past from the depths of the sea. A festive party is held on the ship at night. Mia and Jackson go below deck on the Titanic 3 to show their viewers something unusual. There, they accidentally encounter the stowaway and see her performing some dark ritual. The bloggers film her and notice that she deliberately cuts her hand. Apparently, no dark ritual can be performed without blood. The woman licks her fingers and calls upon a dark god who is supposed to correct the mistakes of the past. At that moment, the ship experiences several power outages and mobile phone signals begin to fail. Mia and Jackson meet one of their fans, and then Cochrane. The professor flirts with Mia and teases Jackson. A fight almost breaks out between the two men. Soon, the ship reaches the place where, more than 100 years ago, the legendary Titanic collided with an iceberg. A moment of silence is announced on board. The red-haired woman senses a strong wind rising. She sees the ghost of Captain Smith beside her, reaches out to him, and calls him her great-grandfather. Mia and Jackson walk along the deck with their camera and hear some music. It's another ghost, playing a violin. The lovers decide to dance. The power goes out on the Titanic 3 once again. Using his violin, the ghost emits a terrifying ultrasonic sound that nearly drives everyone mad and drags Jackson overboard. Everything suddenly stops. Mia frantically searches for her husband. Cochrane joins her. The woman grabs her phone and tells her followers what's happening. The ghost with a violin appears in front of her and begins playing again. The ship continues its journey and enters a dense fog. No one is able to contact Captain Rhodes. Cochrane chats with a wealthy elderly tourist and discusses the fate of the Titanic. He sells her an expensive piece of jewelry from his collection. Two workers notice Mia lying on the deck. The woman shows no signs of life. A crew member named Parker finds Captain Rhodes at the party. He tells her that something strange is happening on board the Titanic 3. Andrews appears and leads the captain to one of the decks. Mia is lying there. It looks like someone attacked her. One of the workers in the lower section of the ship hears strange noises. Those are ghosts. There are so many of them. The man fails to escape. Captain Rhodes watches the footage from Mia's phone. She sees that Jackson has disappeared, and moments later, something attacked his wife. Cochrane was the last person to see Mia alive. Captain Rhodes finds Cochrane and interrogates him in Andrew's presence. The man insists he hasn't done anything wrong, although everyone knows he had a bad relationship with that couple. When Captain Rhodes leaves, we learn that Andrews and Cochrane are partners. Andrews directs wealthy tourists to Cochrane, and Cochrane sells them various artifacts from the Titanic. Captain Rhodes notices that the ship has started moving again, but that's impossible since the engines are shut down. Several large icebergs float nearby. A ghostly woman appears on the deck. She looks at the necklace of one of the wealthy tourists with interest, and then emits a terrifying sound. The wealthy tourist is strangled by her own necklace, and soon she collapses onto the deck. Captain Rhodes realizes that the ship must be stopped immediately before a new catastrophe occurs. She and Andrews try to do it manually, but they don't have enough strength. Several important mechanisms on the lower deck fail, and soon a powerful explosion follows. The crew of the Titanic 3 begins to panic. Part of the engine room machinery breaks down, making the vessel even more uncontrollable. Before long, a massive iceberg appears directly ahead of the Titanic's course. If they don't change direction, they will crash into it. The problem is that the communication interference prevents them from contacting other ships passing through these waters. Captain Rhodes barely manages to reach the Coast Guard and relay the coordinates of the Titanic 3. She asks them to send a tugboat to avoid an evacuation. Unfortunately, the nearest vessel will arrive in 2 hours. Cochrane is locked inside one of the cabins that serves as a makeshift prison cell. The cabin begins to flood, and the lights go out. Cochrane turns on his flashlight and once again hears that same horrifying ultrasonic sound. Afterward, the ghost appears in his cabin, and it is definitely far from friendly. One of the tourists tells Captain Rhodes that she saw a ghost. Obviously, no one believes her. Andrews finds Cochrane lying on the floor and shaking with terror. The professor also claims he saw a ghost. Captain Rhodes realizes this no longer sounds like a coincidence. Andrews and Cochrane spot the same illegal passenger on the staircase. The girl admits her name is Adina, and she is the great-granddaughter of the Titanic's captain, Edward Smith. With hysterical laughter, she declares that everything is Cochrane's fault. He stole the jewels from the Titanic, and now the spirits are taking revenge on everyone for his greed. The Titanic 3 is cursed, and no one will escape punishment. Another ghost appears in Cochrane's path and finds another victim. The professor manages to escape. They try to lock Idina in the cabin, but there is already another ghost inside. Andrews draws his gun. Well, that's a useless weapon against someone who has no physical body. The ghost forms a mental connection with Adina, and Andrews freezes in horror. It turns out the spirit is transferring its power and even its personality to the woman. Moments later, Adina uses her new supernatural abilities to attack Andrews. The Titanic 3 once again suffers power outages. Captain Rhodes notices a ghost, but the others can't see it. Cochrane hides in his cabin. He wants to get rid of all the jewels taken from the Titanic. Unfortunately, a ghost manages to find him even in the bathroom. The spirits continue their macabre amusement, leaving fewer and fewer passengers alive. Idina breaks into the control room and attacks Parker, then Captain Rhodes. A massive iceberg approaches. Collision is now inevitable. Idina smiles manically and willingly takes her own life. The Titanic 3 crashes into the massive iceberg. Panic erupts on board. Everyone is urged to gather on the upper deck immediately. The enormous liner slowly begins to sink. Cochrane finds Captain Rhodes and says there is only one way to fix the situation. All the artifacts taken from the legendary Titanic must be returned to the bottom of the ocean. However, it is already too late. The passengers must be evacuated to the lifeboats as soon as possible. People feel as if they've ended up on the real Titanic at the very moment of its sinking. Another ghost attacks Andrews. The man tries to use his gun but ends up turning it on himself. Captain Rhodes coordinates the rescue operation and asks Cochrane to help her. People run across the ship in panic, occasionally encountering ghosts. In fact, there are more and more of them now. Those who were once human also turn into ghosts, including Andrews. The ship's support beams collapse, so it tilts more and more. Fortunately, most of the passengers manage to get into the lifeboats in time. However, some of the boats overturn. The Titanic 3 is sinking rapidly. Cochrane lies in a boat, shaking with terror. he manages to save Captain Rhodes. The man begins to laugh hysterically. He is the main cause of all this disaster, yet somehow he survived. Cochrane believes this is wrong and takes his own life. Unfortunately, he immediately becomes a ghost.